All right. WHGE 95.3 FM coming up. The Open Eye. Good morning, Sherry. I see you, sister.
Those of us that indulge or commit in
So I was a little late, had some technical difficulty.
Of mental masturbation or ego diddling. We do so because the chains of oppression of people's minds are deep and difficult to remove.
Good morning, my children of the sun. Welcome to the Open Eye on WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm your host, Third Eye Optometrist, Patrice Gibbs. Yes, indeed, here to get them started. Every generation has its purpose. Ours is to reveal the truth and reverse the brainwashing. And that's what we do right here on the Open Eye. We reveal the truth to you. We don't BS around. We let you know exactly how it's going and how it went. For instance, have you heard of the Great Negro Plot? The conspiracy of 1741, also known as the Great Negro Plot of 1741, or the slave insurrection of 1741. Okay, let me get it to you. A supposed plot by slaves and poor whites in the British colony of New York in 1741 to revolt and level New York City with a series of fires. Historians disagree as to whether such a plot existed and, if there was one, its scale. During the court cases, the prosecution kept changing the grounds of accusation and ending with Lincoln insurrection plot to a popish plot of Spanish and other Catholics. In 1741, Manhattan had the second largest slave population of any city in the 13 colonies after Charleston, South Carolina. Right? You catch that? That's for those that, when I say, oh, well, slavery was a southern thing. No. In 1741, Manhattan in New York had the second largest slave population of any city in the 13 colonies after Charleston, South Carolina. Rumors of a conspiracy arose against a background of economic competition between poor whites and slaves. A severe winter war between Britain and Spain, with heightened anti-Catholic and anti-Spanish feelings, and recent slave revolts in South Carolina and St. John in the Caribbean. In March and April 1741, a series of 13 fires erupted in Lower Manhattan, the most significant one within the walls of Fort George, then the home of the governor. After another fire at a warehouse, a slave was arrested after having been seen fleeing it. A 16-year-old Irish indentured servant, Mary Burton, arrested in a case of stolen goods, testified against the others as participants in a supposedly growing conspiracy of poor whites and blacks to burn the city, kill the white men, take the white women for themselves, and elect a new king and governor. In the spring of 1741, fear gripped the Manhattan as fires burned all across the island. The suspected culprits were New York slaves, some 200 of which were arrested and tried for conspiracy to burn the town and murder its white inhabitants. As in Salem witch trials and the court examining the Denmark-Vesey plot in Charleston, a few witnesses implicated many other suspects. In the end, over 100 people were hanged, exiled, or burned at the stake. Most of the convicted people were hanged or burnt. How many is uncertain. The bodies of two supposed ringleaders, Caesar, a slave, and John Hewson, a white cobbler and tavern keeper, were gibbeted. Their corpses were left to rot in public. 72 men were deported from New York, sent to Newfoundland, various islands in the West Indies, and the Madeiras. 1741. Let me get my disclaimer out the way. All right. It's the Open Eye.
The views and opinions expressed on the Open Eye are those of the hosts, guests, and contributors, and do not reflect the policy or position of WHGE 95.3 FM, nor our sponsor, the Delaware Center for Homeless Vets. Any content provided by Open Eye's hosts, guests, or contributors are theirs and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, company, or individual.
WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. I'm your host, Third Eye Optometrist, Patrice Gibbs. Let's keep it moving here. Okay. Wait a minute. Okay. Listen to this. He called ahead to make reservations for him and his wife. But when they got to the motel, the desk clerk looked at them and nervously told them there were no vacancies. It was October 8th, 1963, and the motel turned out to be a whites-only motel. Hey, Steve. He was furious that this could be happening to him. He thought he had achieved a fair amount of success in his life and that those barriers no longer applied to him. How many other people got confused about that and still do? But it didn't matter who he was. He still had the wrong skin color. His wife nudged him and explained that they needed to go. They're going to kill you, she said. He replied back, they're not going to kill me. I'm Sam Cooke. His wife just looked at him and replied, no, to them, you're just another, you know. Sam Cooke would later be arrested in jail. He went on to continue his successful music career, though, becoming a rare crossover hit who became popular with both black and white alike. But he never did forget about that evening. Within 1 or 2 months of that incident, Sam Cooke started putting the words down for a new song, a song which he reportedly said scared him. He sang it for his protege, Bobby Womack, asking, what it sound like? His friend truthfully told him, it sounds like death. To which Sam Cooke replied, man, that's kind of how it sounds to me. That's why I'm never going to play it in public. The song was titled, A Change Is Gonna Come, which has become Cooke's signature song, a song Rolling Stone now calls one of the greatest songs of all time. Unfortunately, Sam Cooke never lived to witness the song's success. Just before the song was to be released as a single in December of 1964, Sam Cooke would be shot to death at a motel in Los Angeles. The song eventually became one of the anthems of the civil rights movement, becoming a universal message of hope. If you haven't heard it, I don't know where you've been. No, I'm not going to play it on here because of the copyright foolishness that goes on. But by all means, look it up. Sam Cooke's A Change Is Gonna Come. This is the Open Eye, WHGE 95.3 FM. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. I'm I'm your host, Patrice Gibbs. All right, let's get them started. Or get them going, keep them going. Quote from Dr. King. Always relevant. A riot is the language of the unheard. And what is it that America has failed to hear? It has failed to hear that the plight of the Negro poor has worsened over the last few years. It has failed to hear that the promises of freedom and justice have not been met. And it has failed to hear where large segments of white society are more concerned about tranquility and the status quo than about justice, equality, and humanity. Now, I said it's still relevant. That's still relevant. As we watch the protests go on over the genocide in Palestine, perpetrated by the Zionists of Israel. You know, it's something that's from Robert Reich. The moral crisis of our age has nothing to do with gay marriage or abortion. It's insider trading, obscene CEO pay, wage theft from ordinary workers. You know, wage theft is the biggest theft in America. Wall Street's continued gambling addiction, corporate payoffs to friendly politicians, and the billionaire takeover of our democracy. You know, the real parasites, people who dismiss the unemployed and dependent as parasites, fail to understand economics and what parasitism is. A successful parasite is one that is not recognized by its host, one that can make its host work for it without appearing as a burden, such as the ruling class in this capitalist society. Big Al's brother Vaughn, I see you. So you want the government to stop giving poor people free stuff. Funny how you don't care about the $70 billion a year we spend on subsidizing Wall Street banks. The $38 billion in subsidies given to oil companies. The $2.1 trillion that Fortune 500 corporations are stashing abroad to avoid paying U.S. taxes. And $153 billion a year we spend to subsidize McDonald's and Walmart's low-wage workers. That's right. That's exact. Watch them get record profits. Won't pay their employees anything other than slave wages. And idiots get up talking about, oh, we need to cut food stamps, which is like 1/10 of 1% of the budget. And you wonder why we have people sleeping in the street in tents. You have people working 2 jobs. We have a term in America that is the craziest thing that you ever want to hear. The working poor. People working 12, 16 hours a day and still can't afford to pay their rent and feed their family. But they're parasites. And God, well, I tell you, it's just amazing. Anyway, once again, I have to quote my man, George Carlin. Beware stupid people in large numbers. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. I'm Patrice Gibbs, your third eye optometrist. Yeah. Let me ask you something. Listen to this. And tell me if you see anything wrong with this elementary school assignment. Okay? Now listen to this. An intro to the 13 colonies. The 13 colonies were the colonies on the Atlantic coast of North America, founded between 1607, Virginia, and 1733, Georgia. King George III of England ruled the 13 colonies, and by 1774, thousands of people from Europe and Africa came to America for new opportunities and a better life. You see anything wrong with that? Thousands of people from Europe and Africa came to America for new opportunities and a better life. Let me tell you what's wrong with that. Africans didn't come here for new opportunities. Opportunities to do what? To get your ass whooped and work to death? And this is the crap that they teach it in school. You know, Ben Carson said Africans were involuntary immigrants. Involuntary, you know, Dr. Clark said that we were the only people that were invited. A dubious invitation indeed. Involuntary immigrants, my ass. You're an involuntary immigrant, that means you were kidnapped and forced to come here. Thousands of people from Europe and Africa came here for new opportunities and a better life. This morning you got up and you lived in the city, in the bustling city of Benin. You went out for a little, you know, hike in the forest or the woods or whatever, and the next thing you know, you were surrounded by some people who turned you over to some Europeans. Oh yeah, Africans sold Africans. No. Cut that crap. Africans did not sell Africans. You have to remember there were different cities and nations and what have you that got into wars with each other. And when they got into these wars, they had prisoners of war. And not knowing or understanding the evil that is the European in their practice of chattel slavery, they traded off some of their prisoners of war for weapons. So it wasn't Africans. It was different nations in Africa. And many of them, when they found out about chattel slavery, they put a stop to this. They refused to sell even their enemies, but their fellow men from the continent, to these Europeans. A dubious invitation indeed. Yeah. And like I said, they fought against this, many of them, when they would not participate in the slave trade, were themselves attacked by the Europeans, kidnapped, and forced into slavery. Forced into this involuntary immigration. And for those of you that want to harp on this thing about, oh, they sold them into slavery. Let me ask you something. Who's worse, the one that kidnapped you or the one that bought you and kept you in bondage in perpetuity? Wake the hell up. Yeah, this is the crap that's going on in our schools. Mm-hmm. What they don't talk about and what was going on here. Because, of course, yeah, and I'm gonna hit on this as we go on. Okay, that it's not just slavery that we deserve reparations for. Not just slavery. Okay? Let us get it straight here. Yeah, and I'm gonna talk about reparations. Many of the reasons why. Yesterday was the 31st of May. That would make it 123 years since the Tulsa Massacre, where a white mob made up of citizens, law enforcement, and deputies terrorized and murdered over 300 black people and left over 10,000 to 12,000 homeless. And let us not forget the Greenwood District, known as Black Wall Street, and memorialize it as part of the terror rained down on black people post-Reconstruction. In other words, Tulsa was part of a whole, but only, and sadly, the most well-known out of far too many. Chicago, 1919. Springfield, 1908. East St. Louis, 1917. The Black Massacres, New York, 1863. You know about the Black Massacre in New York in 1863? For all those that want to compare Irish servitude, a lot different from slavery, I want to remind you of 1863 in New York. It was the draft riots from the Irish. And they found out that they had that practice, I forget what it was called, but you could pay like $300 to get out of the draft if you had enough money. Only rich white people had that kind of money to buy their way out of the draft for the Civil War. When the Irish found this out, they lost their minds. Blamed black people. Went around New York City, murdering, terrorizing black people wholesale. It was Washington in 1919. Elaine, what was that? Where's Elaine? I'm not quite sure. But at any rate, the list is extensive. Philadelphia, 1985, they dropped a bomb on a neighborhood, on a black neighborhood, 1985. And let us not forget the 9 that were murdered in church. Okay? And that wasn't in the 1800s, the early 1900s. Charleston, 2015. See, as I said last week, those that want to suppress history have every intention of repeating it. Think of John Earl Reese. You ever heard of him? This tells the mentality of these people. I heard a guy on, blacks didn't build nothing, if they build anything. When we were left to our own devices, we built plenty. John Earl Reese was shot while dancing in a cafe with his 13 and 15-year-old cousins in Gregg County, East Texas. Local police were reluctant to investigate the shooting, and it didn't get very much attention since the children killed were black. The following year, after the Texas Rangers decided to take the case, 2 white men were arrested. One of the shooters admitted that they decided to shoot the kids because they were angry about a new school being built in a mostly black community. Yeah, anytime we build something up, they destroy it. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. You're with Patrice Gibbs on The Open Eye. You know, California has had a reparations commission, and they put out a report. 12 harms detailed in California's reparation report. And these are the reasons that reparation is deserved. The 12 harms done to people of African descent. 1, enslavement. 2, racial terror. 3, political disenfranchisement. 4, housing segregation. 5, separate and unequal education. 6, racism in environment and infrastructure. 7, pathologizing the black family. 8, control over creative, cultural, and intellectual life. And you know, I think I'm gonna stop on that one and give you a little explanation about that. Probably one of the most well-known victims of that was Little Richard, one of the inventors of rock and roll. His music was stolen from him. He didn't get his royalties right. Yeah, buddy. He didn't get his royalties right. And you know who blessed him? The great Michael Jackson. Yeah, Michael Jackson, when he purchased the Beatles catalog, which ended his friendship with Paul McCartney, oh well. Part of that catalog was the music of Little Richard. When Michael found out that he owned Little Richard's music, you know what he did? He turned the rights over to Little Richard free of charge. Bless you, Michael. 9, stolen labor and hindered opportunity. 10, an unjust legal system. 11, mental and physical harm and neglect. And 12, the racial wealth gap. You know, it's something that a Republican that I know, and people are just poor because they made bad choices. No, it's not by happenstance. It's not by happenstance at all. It's planned and forced in. There's a new book that reveals how the U.S. stole $600 billion from black Americans through unfair taxes. This is after slavery. Okay, after slavery. $600 billion. Okay, because it's not just about slavery when the call for reparations comes up. Okay? It's not just the terrorism, but the economic oppression that ensured the economic racial wealth gap. This new book unravels how the U.S. stole $600 billion from black Americans. $600 billion since Reconstruction. Andrew W. Kroll, professor of history and African American studies at the University of Virginia, put extensive research in his new book, which describes how U.S. bureaucracies created the nation's ongoing wealth racial wealth gap by implementing a system of highly unjust municipal and state taxes. The black tax, 150 years of theft, exploitation, dispossession in America, shares statistics, studies, and tales of black Americans being cheated out of land ownership and pushed into poverty by racist laws and practices dating back to the Jim Crow era. And still going on. Starting in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, unfair tactics were used to doubly disadvantage black landowners by artificially inflating property value estimates for tax calculation, overcharging them for their land and exploiting their inability to pay as a means to seize properties. And they still doing it. Examples include Anthony Fleming and J.R. Brooks, two black men forced off their farmland by white supremacist mobs, who went on to establish a town with the goal of enabling black Americans to own land. By 1911, Edmondson, Arkansas encompassed 30 square miles of stores, a bank, a hotel, and a post office for local black homeowners. However, 20 years later, the town was no more after white plantation owners plotted to seize the land by imposing taxes on lots the Edmondson residents were unaware of. Once the residents failed to pay the taxes they had no clue about, the plantation owners seized the land. They deeded over to it was deeded over to one of the plantation owners who had concocted the scheme and demolished all the buildings. Okay. In 1920, Hillary Thomas Stewart Sr. lost 24 acres of land in a tax sale under dubious circumstances after the great-great-grandfather of George Floyd failed to pay $18.83 in taxes. Losing the land forced the Stewart family into poverty. That's George Floyd's great-great-grandfather. Okay, George Floyd's life might have been a hell of a lot different if his grandfather had not been forced into poverty by racism. That's just one example. One example. When looking at the 11 million acres of land taken from black Americans, it equates to $326 billion in today's money. Not to forget the millions in taxes black Americans have overpaid for over a century. From 1870 to 2020, black Americans were overtaxed by more than $275 billion in 2023 dollars. Carl didn't just focus on the grim findings, but he does share possible solutions for making up for the last century of financial oppression against the black community. He suggests the establishment of a federal fiscal equity program that mirrors Canada's program. This is the past that we live with today, but it does not have to be our future. Does not have to be our future. 11 million acres of land. $600 billion. Every group has gotten reparations. Okay? But those of African descent were probably the most deserving of reparations. Crickets. WHGE 95.3 FM. Over and I. WHGE 95.3 FM, The Open Eye. You have a cell phone? You got a laptop? Drive an electric car? It's powered by cobalt. Found in the mines of the Congo. These mines I almost lost my thought there on how deep this goes. They have children digging in these mines. Sister Tracy showed a video in one of these pits where they're digging cobalt, with 15,000 people stuck in these pits, digging out cobalt by hand, not by machine. Now the manufacturers, Apple and the people that make Android and Tesla and Samsung and whatever other corporations use this cobalt, the power, and we're all participants because we all got cell phones and laptops and electric cars. I don't know too many people that don't have a cell phone. When the Apple, whatever number they're up to, comes out, don't buy it. Because these corporations had promised and agreed that they would not allow children to be abused in these mines. And that's exactly what's going on in the slavery in the Congo today. Tell you how bad it is. The Democratic Republic of Congo is seeing a dramatic deterioration of infrastructure and displacement of citizens as a result of armed violence flooding in the world's largest hunger crisis. In recent months, rampant violence of armed groups has forced more than 500,000 people to flee their homes. While the United Nations says some 3,000 families also lost their homes after recent intense flooding and mudslides in the eastern part of the country. That is not natural. That comes from the environmental damage that is done to mine these things to power these corporations. $25 million people are facing starvation as displaced citizens are unable to access their land to grow their own food. And the humanitarian response has so far failed to address the crisis. You don't even hear about it on mainstream news. They don't want it talked about. The crisis is beyond belief, says Secretary General of the Norwegian Refugee Council, Jan Egeland, who just visited the DRC and reports that the international community still looks for the country's resources while ignoring its people's plight. The Congo is not ignored by those who want to extract the riches of that place. It's ignored by the rest of the world who would want to come to the relief of children and the families of the Congo. Don't forget the legacy of the NATO countries in the DR Congo. When Lumumba's determination to achieve genuine independence and had full control over the Congo's resources to utilize them to improve the living conditions of his people was received as a threat to Western interests. From 1961 till right now, the imperialist powers hide behind puppet regimes that distribute the essential resources in the DR Congo to satisfy imperial interests. Did you know that the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, produces up to 70% of the world's cobalt, which is, of course, an essential mineral for lithium batteries and products for Western companies like Apple, Tesla, Microsoft. And that 35,000 plus of these miners, those working in the mines, enslaved in those mines, are children as young as 6 years old. The DRC is one of the poorest countries in the world, but the mineral wealth is estimated to be worth $24 trillion. Resources which countries and multinational countries ruthlessly exploit at the expense of human lives. The Congo's biggest sin was allowing the murder of Patrice Lumumba, who was, if he was able to govern the Congo, we would be looking at a very different nation right now. WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm Patrice Gibbs. Yeah, that's what Nocha Roma would say. Blue, bleep, blue. God damn it. WHGE 95.3 FM. Hey, let's listen in on a job interview. HR. So let me get this straight. You got fired from a top executive job because you did a poor job. The company immediately hired a new top executive. But you couldn't handle that. You were so angry you refused to leave. And you called all your friends to come and vandalize the workplace. When you did leave, on your way out of the office, you took a lot of the company's confidential documents. I'll be damned. And when you got caught, you refused to give many of them back. And then after you got fired, you got indicted for 81, 90-something felonies and crimes. And then you got convicted, found guilty of 34 felony counts. And now you're reapplying for the same job with the same company. Must be a white dude we talking about, huh? Yeah. The Orange Disaster was convicted of 34 counts, felony counts. Found guilty. Now, if you're wondering what Trump's conviction means, well, let's take a look at that. On Thursday, a New York jury found former President Orange Disaster, Cheeto Mussolini, guilty on criminal charges related to the former president's cover-up of hush money payments to an adult film actress, Stormy Daniels. After 2 days of deliberation, the jury returned guilty verdicts on 34 criminal charges. Guilty on all counts. Before you put all your money into an upside-down flag and free Donald Trump t-shirts, let's take a look at this. You know, it would be nice to see him in a jumpsuit that matches his skin tone. The Orange Disaster in orange. Is he going to jail? Yeah. Each of the 34 accounts of falsifying business records in the first degree carries a maximum of 4 years. However, the orange disaster doesn't have a criminal record. Isn't that amazing? And his felonies are not classified as violent. So most experts believe he will likely receive probation or home confinement. In the rare case that Trump is sentenced to prison, it'll likely be less than a year. Yeah. 34 counts of a felony should get you jail time. Plus, he's white. Can you still vote? Actually, yeah. Now, he's registered to vote in Florida, where convicted felons are not allowed to vote until they complete their prison sentence. However, Florida honors the voting laws in the state where the felony conviction occurs. So he is convicted in New York, so Florida is going to honor the voting laws there. And according to a 2021 New York state law, any person convicted of a felony is eligible to vote upon release from incarceration, even if they're on probation or parole. Even if the judge sentenced Trump to a term of incarceration on his July 11 sentencing date, the convicted felon is expected to appeal the decision, which will push his unlikely prison term past the 2024 election. Now, can he still be president? While he can't buy a gun, there's nothing in the U.S. Constitution that actually disqualifies a convicted felon from serving as president. It's not like the president is in charge of any kind of weapons or has a high-ranking post office job. And the crazy thing is, his felony conviction could help him become president. Last week, 24% of Trump supporters said a guilty verdict would make them more likely to vote for Trump, while only 7% said they were less likely. The results of a 2013 study that shows white men with felony convictions are 125% more likely to be offered a job than black men with the same education and experience. Yeah, I'm sure the Trump campaign is sending messages right now asking donors to put some money on his books. Now, it's something that America's flawed justice system has been racially profiling, wrongfully convicting, unjustly sentencing, and mass incarcerating black people for centuries. And white America had full confidence in that system. Yes, they did. Trump gets convicted for crimes he actually committed, because he did that ish. And all of a sudden, the same white America no longer has confidence in the criminal justice system. Yeah. And you got some people that are, they're ashamed of what Donald Trump did. Yeah. They're ashamed. And they're saying, you got some sane people here. Dear world, we apologize for Donald Trump. He's an embarrassment to this country, and many of us are working hard to see he doesn't get reelected. That's from sane Americans. Cut the crap. When was American sane? This society is run by a bunch of psychopaths. Are you kidding me? Trump is not an embarrassment. Trump's a revelation. This is the same country where 59 million stupid-ass Americans re-elected George W. Bush. This is the same racist-ass country that elected Ronald Reagan. May he roast in hell and may the devil sodomize him with a pitchfork. Elected Ronald Reagan twice. Trump is not an embarrassment. Trump is as American as apple pie, the Star-Spangled Banner, lynchings, the KKK, murderous police, big pharma drug dealers, big oil production, big oil pollution, mass incorporation, robber baron bankers, land grabbing corporations, assassinations of black leaders, racism, and greed. This is America. What sane Americans? The hell out of here. Yeah. And you know, we coming around to the close here. We need to get it together. Okay? It's not about equality. It's not even about reparations anymore. It's about survival. You know, I often tell you, we can look to nature for examples on how to handle things. You know what? You kill one bee, get attacked by the hive. Ain't no marching, ain't no rallies, ain't no protests. It's real unity. Kill one, you get attacked by the hive. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. Yeah, I know I came in a little late, but I ain't leaving a little early. All right. As I always tell you, destiny determines who enters your life, but you decide who stays. Therefore, value those who value you, and don't treat those as a priority who treat you as an option. This is the Open Eye. I'm Patrice Gibbs on WHGE 95.3 FM. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Brother Lawrence. I always try. Yeah, here, okay. As I always tell you, gas, global African supremacy. The world was a much better place when the black man ruled. Thanks for joining me.